Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean, and my triumphant return is back. So this weekend I actually got to do the HK slap on my MP5. I took a friend out for his birthday. He finally cashed in on his birthday gift. So we actually went out and shot, 6 of my guns, most of them historical. He hadn't shot an M1. He hadn't shot a 1903. I got to shoot my 1903 for the first time. I took the MP5 out. That was not historical. He wanted to shoot a 7.62 by 39 Kalashnikov, so I brought my Romanian Wasser. I think what he initially wanted was a lot of guns that were all original, and my historical ones, the 1903, the M1, the Luger, those are all, and the K98, they're all original. They're all, factory as they should have came and probably went to war. But my MP5 and my Kalashnikovs, none of them, and none of my AKMs are anywhere near a stock except for the 74 I built. So what did I learn over this weekend? Friday I had a very new friend, a very good friend actually. He's becoming a very good friend. Come to me and ask me to build, in the IT world we call it a bomb, a build of materials for an AR-15. And what he expressed was kind of interesting. It's kind of what we always, those of us in the know and have looked at the world lately, have been thinking about this for a long time, is that the world isn't in the greatest place it's been. And if you have a family, you may want to have something like a black rifle to protect that family. Now, he has one, but it's not one he considers a go-to-war gun is the best way I'd put it. What we would say, in the 2A community, a go-to-war gun. But between the two incidences of, taking my best friend out, who is pretty well versed in firearms, and so is my new friend, but there's a knowledge gap that I have, that knowledge that they don't have. And this is where I've, mentioned multiple times about getting a 2A mentor. This is where that shines. If you take my best friend, he is a guy that knows firearms very well, but he knows modern firearms, okay? And you can tell that. One of the things I saw, and I thought it was kind of funny, but he caught himself doing it, was that if you fire a bolt-action gun, you actually have to manipulate the bolt to make the next round go. If you're used to modern firearms, that's not necessarily a thing. And then if you fired a modern bolt-action rifle, you can kind of just barely manipulate the bolt and it will eject the round fully out. Well, on something like a Mauser or a 1903, the extractor does grab a hold of the round and starts to pull it out, but the actual part that kicks the round completely out, the rest of the extractor, is usually another part of the gun, and it's farther back in the receiver, and it actually has to hit it, and it kicks the round completely out. If you're not used to manipulating with authority a bolt from, 1903, or in this case, that 1903 was made in 1918, or a K98 that was made in, 1941, you may not know that you need to manipulate them with authority to get the round completely out and to make them go. The other thing that was interesting is with this particular person, he's very, very versed, is he had never shot a Luger. This is one of those things he wanted to do for his birthday, and we finally got to connect, and we finally got to go do this. And what surprised him was how the Luger works. He's not used to a toggle lock, and there's a reason why the 100-year-old toggle lock isn't a thing anymore. And there's some definitely deficiencies with the Luger. Could I use it in a modern context? Yes. Would I use it in a modern context? Absolutely not. I would take my Glock or a 1911 any day of the week to any Luger, as cool as they are, as much swag as they have. But there's some deficiencies. Number one, what I noticed with the sights on the Luger is they're kind of deficient, especially if you're used to modern sights. That was something that my friend noticed right away. The other thing was how you actually manipulate the manual of arms for a Luger is a little bit different than what we're used to. If you have a Luger or if you've ever shot one, you actually have to manipulate that arm. You pull on the two little nodes on top of the locking, the toggle lock, and you pull it directly towards you like you would a slide. However, it kind of ratchets it up in a 90-degree angle, and you're like, what the heck is that? And then you finish it out, and it goes home, and it locks in, and you're ready to fire. The other thing I've noticed with a Luger is no matter who shoots it, it tends to want to recoil at a sideway action. And what I mean is, a normal pistol, if you get a good grip on it, it recoils, but this one wants to jerk to the left and down, and it doesn't matter how you manipulate the trigger. Now, I've had this gun looked at by a gunsmith because I was worried, a 100-year-old gun, and this one really is 107 years, I think is what my friend did the math on, because I showed him the manufacturing marks on it and the date it was manufactured, and he was like, wow, that's cool. And that was the real reason why he wanted to go out and try these. These are weapons that you go to like Battlefield Las Vegas and you get to, test them out, and you pay a pretty hefty fee to do it. I'm fortunate enough that being a collector, I have some of these in my collection. The Luger being one of them. It was one of my guns I had to have in my collection before I passed away, even before my dad passed away. And having had it now, can I use it? Absolutely. Is it something you could use yourself to defend yourself with? Absolutely. Is there better options given 100 years of innovation? Absolutely. And they're all based on Browning designs. The newer ones are. A Glock is basically a modified Browning design with some enhancements and improvements. And M&P is the same way. Springfield, their XD series guns are basically modified Browning designs. Any of the ones that actually have a slide are usually a Browning derivative, or they're a CZ type, a Czech derivative of the same concepts. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a reason why the 1911 has been around for 100 years and still going strong. I am not a fan of the 1911 as much as I once was, because I've been in enough training classes, to put it that way, to know that there's some glaring deficiencies. Number one is magazine capacity compared to anything else. 2011 might make that better. I'll tell you right now that a 1911 has a better trigger compared to anything you'll get in a modern pistol, unless you do aftermarket stuff. Let's talk about my other friend, my new friend. He is very wise, he's very smart, he's very intelligent, he's very articulate. But he found out through the grapevine, he works with me. Knowing who your resources are a big thing, right? Especially in the 2A world. And in the IT world, that is a number one thing you need to learn. But he had heard that I'm a gun guy. And he asked me, do you know anything about the AR-15? I said, yeah, I know a little bit. If you ask my friends, they'll say I know a lot more than I actually say I do. That's because I never claimed to be an expert, because I've always had friends that have shown me other things that made me a better shooter. Case in point, my other best friend, Dexton, he is, in all intents and purpose right now, an AR-15 armorer. The guy has built more than I could ever think of. For his family, for his own use, for his friends. He's helped them learn. He learned some of that from me, but he's taken it to a new skill level that I never could compare with. Or at least I don't think I would. He'd disagree, because he's that kind of humble guy. But for someone who doesn't know, when I think back when these types of situations come up, if you've never been exposed to this, how the hell would you know? Think about it. When have you ever picked up a 100-year-old Luger, a 100-year-old pistol, and just got to shoot it? To know its intricacies, to know what it does, to see and experience the history lesson you're about to receive. Same thing goes with a modern gun. when you get a new AR-15 or you get introduced to the AR-15, because that's America's black rifle and everyone in the United States probably should have one, there's some differences with the AR-15 you got to get used to. It's cleaning and it's care and feeding is what I would call it. For the AR-15 is a little more intensive than a Kalashnikov. That's one of the reasons why I like the Kalashnikov is it's kind of a little more rough use. It still needs some care and feeding, but not nearly as much. And for someone to come to you who's very technical and say, hey, I hear you're pretty good at this stuff. Could you help me build or buy or find one that will be reliable in case the world does fall apart? Not thinking that it's 100% going to do it, but it's nice to have in case that happens. If you're, like I said, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at the news lately, and especially if you're affiliated with a church or a faith right now, it's very much on everyone's mind right now that it looks like we're rocket sledding to hell in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things that are deficient in our culture, and you can see that it's not going to take much for that to break. And, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. I say that all the time. I always say stay strapped or get clapped. That's the same mentality. So get that knowledge. If you're wanting to see what these guns do, you're interested in a particular one, before you buy it, maybe find one of those mentors that in the 2A community that has something like this, and go test it out if they're willing to let you. Maybe you have to buy some ammo. In this case, with my best friend, this was a birthday gift. I was not going to let him purchase ammo for this. That's just how I roll for gifts. If I'm giving someone something and this is an experience, therefore, as an experience, I'm going to drive that as best I can, meaning I'm going to get the ammunition if I have it. In this case, I had all of it. I'm going to drive that experience so that they have the best experience possible. That's how I've always dealt with new shooters or someone who's not experienced with something I am. Because if you make it enjoyable, and you're not downgrading him, and you're not calling him an idiot, and you're not, being a basic jackhole, you're going to give them the best experience possible. That's why I've had a good reputation with girls, taking them on a date where I actually show them how to shoot, because a lot of girls are kind of intimidated, but they're kind of curious. But I've also had some of my best friends and some of my really good friends have me walk through some stuff with their wife or significant other because I do it in that fashion. And usually what happens is girls, I don't know what it is about you ladies, you're intimidated by your significant other. You're thinking they're trying to be degrading or anything. What they're looking at is trying to keep you safe. Okay, and I still do that, but I do it in a different fashion. So they may do it and it may come off as grading or degrading. It's not intended to be that way. I know this because I have dealt with that a couple times with my best friends and my really good friends' wives, that we went shooting, and then their wife kind of gets stuck to me for a minute, and they're like, well, he bought me this, and I need to know more about it, but I don't feel exactly comfortable to do that. And you know what's funny about that? Not one of my friends or really good friends were offended by that. They're like, okay, go ahead, do it. Just show them what you can do. You know what you're doing. You have this. They feel safer with you. Roll with that, because all I care about is them being able to use this if something bad happens. Because that's how I see the 2A when it comes to women, unless they're really interested in it. Most of them I have met aren't huge shooters. I met one or two that were really good shooters, like to shoot, my daughter being one. But that's probably because I've had her since she was 7 or 8, maybe 9. I've had her for a long time, and she has naturally absorbed what I do as one of my passion hobbies I have. And she imparts that knowledge on her friends, her family, her other family. And she has been a very good advocate of the 2A, That's what I want. That's what I want from all my kids. And my other two boys are the same way. you know. They teach them that stuff, the basics. Sometimes I get a little more pissed off at some of my younger boys, or my youngest or my middle son, because I expect more from them. But then I think back and I go, well, they didn't, as much as the exposure they haven't had the exposure recently, so they may have forgotten some things. They still got some of the key basics, but sometimes some of those key basics they let slip. And I remember doing the same thing, and I remember getting a very good stern talking to from my uncle about doing something stupid like that. And I hadn't done it since, or at least I didn't think so until, recently. A couple years ago, I had my first ND ever, negligent discharge. There was no incidental or accidental discharge. This was an ND. This was negligence on my part. I was working on a gun for another friend. Didn't check it out as much as I should have, and it went off. Okay, so lesson learned. Luckily, no one was hurt because I observed the basics of keeping the gun in a safe direction all the time, unless I knew something was going on. I'm getting ready to go to work, so to speak, or to put a round downrange and make a target go away. But it's those basics that you got to always be on your top game for the minute you let it slack. And that's how I would put that with me, is I was confident enough to think, well, yeah, I'm going to fix this. I'm just going to see what's going on with it. And then I had a malfunction. Oh, yeah. You want to talk about a humbling moment. Okay. Someone who considers themselves in the know in the 2A. I can always learn more. So that's why I never claim to be 100% an expert. I'm well versed in what I know. I can tell you things, historical things about the Luger, about Georg Luger, about how it came to be, what makes it so different, why it was so significant historically. Maybe I'll do that in another podcast when I'll talk about just the Luger. Same thing for the 1911, because the 1911, in my eyes, is the base for every modern pistol we look at nowadays. That's kind of what has always been my draw with the 2A, is the historical. I'm a history buff, okay? I like to look at the history of the world and see what's going on and how we progressed in ways to get to certain points. That's what has always driven my passion for the 2A, and to be able to share that knowledge that I've had lots of people pour into me is a great compliment to me. But I don't do that without thinking about the repercussions of that. I have taken, I don't know how many people that were absolutely 100% anti-gun, you don't need to have it, whatever, taken them to the range, showed them a good time at the range, and changed their mind. And that's what I think we all need to do. If some of these diehard leftists that are so anti-gun actually got to talk one-on-one with someone like Colion Noir, or even one of their best friends, and you just have a cup of coffee with them and you're not actually trying to convince them, you're just having a conversation, and be well-versed enough and eloquent enough to explain why you think the way you do. Especially after the last 4 or 5 years of the summer of love and everything else that's been going on, you're going to find a lot more people that are a hell of a lot more receptive to the 2A than you thought. And then to take them out and show them what an AR-15 actually does. You talk about a life-changing event for someone who sees it as a demon-possessed object, and you show them it takes some actual thought process to make the gun do what it does. And without having those thought processes and those actual physical things that a person would have to do, it's just a tool. It's just a rock. It's just a piece of metal or plastic. It doesn't do anything without the inputs we give it. So it's always boiled down to what we all knew and always have known. It's the idiot behind the trigger that causes the problems. It's not the gun. You can ban them. You can try to ban them. I don't think you're going to get very far in the United States nowadays, despite what the administration keeps trying to do and what politicians try to do. Politicians consistently try to, make these backroom deals. And if anything was a shock to me, is realizing pretty early on in my life, before I really even became a voter, that if politicians talk about something like guns and the way they speak about it, it shows their ignorance because they don't know a damn thing about it. And I'm kind of really hesitant to give anyone power or give them any power over something if they don't know a damn thing about it. And if they don't know a damn thing about what they're talking about with guns, what else does that apply to? You know, when they come out and say the economy is doing great, I don't know, man. Every time I go to the grocery store, the bill keeps getting higher and higher, and I'm getting less and less. Oh, we're doing the best we ever can. We need to change to this green transition. Well, I don't know, man. I live in a place where, you know, the closest big city is 3.5 hours away or 3 hours away. Yeah, I think the electric vehicles can make it there, but what happens when I get there and have to drive around the town? Where am I going to charge this thing at? You know, there's those things that always throw a wrench in their plans when they start bringing them up to me. Same thing should be said when we start talking about guns. You know, when people say, hey, you need to ban this, no one should have access to a weapon of war. Well, where is my AR-15 a weapon of war? You know, mine doesn't have the features that the military has. And to be blunt, I honestly say mine has better quality control and has been maintained better than anything the military would have. Is it capable of mass destruction? Yeah. If I am the one doing it, I have no intent on hurting anyone. I hope to God I never have to use these in anger, because there's no reason to. The 2 times, or the 3 times now I can think of where I've almost had to draw my gun because things degraded. I used verbal judo before I ever got to that point, because it's, you know, if you're a normal human being, think about it. We don't want to hurt anybody. Yeah, we can fight. Yeah, we can do that. We train to do that. Okay, but the repercussions after the event, you know, you're going to live with everything you do. You're going to have to make justice for that one way. You know, make repentance for that. You're going to have to make compensation for that. Are you ready for that? You know, that's something that I think a lot of people who blow a lot of smoke about, you know, well, I'll just, you know, if I have to, I'll just shoot them. Well, really? Think about what you just said. Is that really how you're going to get out of that situation? You know, there's some situations I imagine you don't have a choice. You know, that I pray to God I never get into one. I'm always looking for options to keep my choices. That's why I do what I do, is it gives me options. And as one of my, mentors by proxy, one of the guys I follow a lot and have been through and done some of his online training courses and his videos, Sonny Pazikas, I've mentioned him many times on this podcast. It's always better to have options than not. It's depressing not to have options. The same goes with the 2A. And this is your God-given right for defense of yourself. You know, what's going on in the political spaces with guns right now? Same stuff. Yeah, politicians fighting about banning stuff in Illinois, California. New Mexico fight is kind of dead for the season unless they call a special session. I haven't heard any more rumblings of that. Colorado is so close to losing any modern sporting rifle and semi-automatic that it's scary. They're a border to New Mexico. And my thoughts and prayers and best wishes for all you guys up there. It looks like you could win. I mean, Brandon Herrera went up there and spoke for you. A lot of other people have. Hold those politicians to the fire. And what I mean by that is when it's time for elections, vote them out of office. You have to be a participant in this arena. That's why we started New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. Why I started it was because the political appetites in New Mexico had gotten to the point where, especially after the shooting that I had to deal with in Aztec, was to ban this type of thing here. It hasn't fixed violence. They still haven't gotten the bans that they wanted. And our governor keeps losing in court for the stuff she's done in Albuquerque, where they've banned basically carrying guns in certain areas. They keep losing in court. And that's what needs to happen, because these are your rights. The time you need this is not going to be dictated by the government. It's going to be dictated by some bad guy who doesn't care about the law anyway. And you're going to have split seconds to make that decision and that choice of what you got to do. And you need to be, like I've said many times before, you need to have thought about those processes before you actually get into those situations. Because there is no guarantee that we're going to be shown kindness by someone else who is already determined to do something bad. Remember to share the love of the 2A. Remember to share the knowledge. And there's nothing wrong with having someone impart some knowledge on you and correcting things that you have made assumptions of or that you had incorrectly. Be humble about it. That's the cool thing about the 2A, is as long as you're not an idiot and you're not a total jackhole, you can be corrected and come back to a situation where you actually agree with some people, or that you actually learn something new. Like, share, subscribe. Most importantly, be great.